First bill I'd like to turn our attention to is House Bill 2476. Adam, could you give us a briefing?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2476 would create two new distinctive license plates. These would be the Silver Star Medal license plate and the Bronze Star Medal license plate. Each plate would only be available to those individuals who have been awarded either the Silver Star or the Bronze Star Medal by the United States government, respectively. These plates would not be transferable to any other person. These plates would be exempt from the normal costs and plate commitment requirements that are usually set forth for distinctive plates, so they'd be exempt from those requirements. Additionally, there's a provision for many military plates that the surviving spouse or family member, if no surviving spouse, would be entitled to possession of the plate in the event of the death of the person who was issued the plate. However, these plates would not be able to be displayed on the vehicle after the death of the individual who earned the award. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you. First proponent, we have Representative Tim Johnson. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson and members of the committee. I come to you from originally the Veterans Committee, and we submitted this bill with great respect for those who have served and have earned the Bronze Star and Silver Star. I wasn't aware until about a year ago that we didn't have a distinctive plate, simply a little sticker that could go on license plates. And as I talked to many of the veterans, we found that a little unique given the large number of distinctive plates running around the state of Kansas. We wanted to honor those people, and so we submitted that. I will tell you there is basically no cost to the state other than the original setup. Then they are paid for, of course, by the people that purchase them. They mean something to those people that have earned them. Testimony in the first hearing that we had from a couple of the individuals I had, Command Sergeant Major Powell and Major Rob Oliver, it's a way of expressing themselves after what they have done. For me personally, I have two sons that served very honorably and have done multiple combat tours in the Middle East and have earned Bronze Stars in combat. When they came home, I remember the tears as they received their honors for what they have done, and they remain in the military today, waiting to see if they will deploy again. So we ask simply that you look at this and help us honor these people in the military that have achieved so many things. I would stand for any questions.
Any questions? Senator Hott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here and your testimony. Could you review me on what it takes to get a Silver Star and a Bronze Star, and if that's strictly in combat or if there's other criteria?
Well, let me turn back here to my notes. The Bronze Star dates back to World War II. It was as it's designated on paper, it's a signal for sacrifice, bravery, and honor while serving their country. There were 30,000 in Korea that were eventually issued. And on Silver Stars, I believe it was 3,463. Silver Star increases the level of sacrifice and danger to the individual, must be recommended by the commanding officer, reviewed. There are additional stipulations for with valor. With valor includes acts in combat. Individuals that have that usually would have the V with it. I have an uncle who earned a Bronze Star in World War II on a Navy ship when he went below to bring sailors back up after they were dive bombed by a Japanese Betty kamikaze plane. And so he received the Bronze Star with valor for his actions. There are Bronze Stars that are for extreme meritorious service over a period of time. The ones that I am familiar with in combat have always been for actions and valor. My one son received his for going up into the Hindu Kush Mountains to rescue a special forces group that was caught. Command Sergeant Major earned his at the Battle of Landing Zone St. George in '69 when they were overrun. And so it reflects those activities. Does that help you, sir?
Yes, I think that's very helpful. And I want to be clear, it has to involve combat or service in a combat zone?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct? Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we know how many Bronze Star and Silver Star recipients there are in the state?
I don't know. I was asked that question before. The facts I do had was there were 150,000 Silver Stars estimated back to World War II from that time period. I don't know in Kansas. I knew in Vietnam there were 720,000 either Bronze or Silver Stars issued. Again, I don't know for the ones in Kansas. There was no statistic for me available through the state group. I can only guess at this time of living members available for this. I will know that in the VFW in Basehor-Linwood area, I think we had 8 with Bronze Stars going back to World War II in our post, which is a fairly smaller one.
Thank you. Committee, further questions? Senator Hawk.
Just one other one, just on a technical piece of this. So you must have a Silver or Bronze Star to get the distinctive license plate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what's the system to check on that, to verify that when a person applies to the Department of Motor Vehicles for one of those distinctive license plates, that you actually can verify that you have the Silver or Bronze Star?
The information from the reviser of statutes that came to our committee, anyone requesting distinctive license plates will be required to submit satisfactory proof to the Director of Vehicles that they were awarded a Silver Star Medal or Bronze Star Medal, not transferable. It's not in this one, but I do know that it talked about the DD-214 information that is available upon discharge from any military force.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much, committee.
Are there any further proponents for 2476? Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent? Anyone wishing to testify as a neutral? We'll close the hearing on House Bill 2476 and turn our attention to House Bill 2597. Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2597 would create 4 new distinctive license plates for the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. Each plate would depict one of the following, either the state park, hunting, fishing, or non-game wildlife. These distinctive plates would be subject to each one would be subject to the $250 initial plate commitment and the payment of up to $5,000 for development costs that is customarily required in statute. And also the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Park with the division's approval would be able to assist with the design. As with most plates, the Kansas, these new plates will be subject to a royalty payment. The amounts would be set between $40 to $100 for each plate, yearly royalty payment. The distribution of the plates, where the money goes, is a little different for these plates than normal plates. For plates depicting the state park, kind of the first class, the entire royalty payment would be directed to the to the parks fee fund, which is currently established in statute. For the other 3 plates, the hunting, the fishing, and the non-game wildlife, an amount equal to the current cost of an annual park and recreation motor vehicle permit that is established in Kansas statute 8-134. That amount would be credited to the parks fee fund, and I believe that amount currently it's like $15 and maybe 50 cents. It's set by the department and can be raised and lowered, so it's not a hard amount set currently in statute. They have the authority to raise it. But I believe that's around the current amount. I'd probably defer to the proponents. They can probably give you more information. However, so that amount would be transferred to the parks fee fund, and then the remaining balance on top of that would be credited to the wildlife fee fund. So it would kind of be a split of the royalty fee. Additionally, there's a provision that would, any motor vehicle who'd be issued one of these 4 plates would be permitted the same rights and obligations to enter a state park as a driver with an annual park permit, so long as the vehicle is currently registered and such registration is not expired, and the vehicle has been issued one of these 4 plates, and the vehicle is displaying such plate as required by law. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam, this may be for Parks and Wildlife, but on your testimony, that $5,000, is that in total for all 4 plates, or is that $5,000 each for a total of $20,000 to develop the plates?
It would be the second. Each plate would be subject to the $5,000, so be about 20 grand if they produced all 4 plates.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, first up, we have Steve Adams. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Steve Adams with the Department of Wildlife and Parks, and the department appreciates the opportunity to appear today in support of House Bill 2597. The revisor did an excellent job of covering the components of the bill. What we are seeking permission to do is to create 4 distinct license plates. One that would support our Kansas state parks, one that would support fisheries, one that would support wildlife, and one that would support our non-game efforts. If I could, I have some concept drawings that I could hand out to the committee. These are concepts. These are concepts, not final images, but they will give you an idea of what the department is thinking in terms of potential design for these plates. As was stated, each of these would allow the owner of the vehicle, it would constitute an annual state park pass, so they would have, similar to the stickers that you can purchase now, they would have access for the vehicle to any of Kansas state parks. The state park specific plate, all of the revenue would go to Kansas state parks. The others, the $15.50, which is the current price of an annual state park pass if you buy it when you renew your vehicle registration, would be credited to the park fee fund. The remainder would be credited to an account available for that particular affinity. If it was wildlife, then it would be credited for wildlife. If it was non-game, then it would go to support non-game programs. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think I would end my testimony and we would stand for any questions.
Committee questions, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are non-game initiatives or programs?
I'm sorry.
What are your non-game programs that you're thinking of?
The most visible one that you may recognize is our Chickadee Checkoff program. That is a tax checkoff. Those programs go to support those revenues go to support the wide variety of efforts to to manage and enhance our non-game species, game species being things like pheasant and quail, non-game being our non-hunting migratory birds, the majority of the species of wildlife that exist within the state. And we undertake a wide variety of programs to support general habitat improvements in management and species-specific targeted efforts at both aquatic and terrestrial species.
Committee for the questions. Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Steve. Would this take place of the permit that they would have in their window? Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator, currently when you buy a an annual state park pass, you get a sticker that you place on the driver's side of your windshield so that staff can see and recognize that you have a state park pass. That's one of the details that we are still trying to sort out, whether we will, in addition to the license plate, issue a sticker to the recipient each time, or whether we will simply utilize the plate. But that's an excellent question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. One of my, I guess, pet peeves or disappointments is that we're not putting the county on the plates anymore. And with these designs, you absolutely have room to put the county still. Would you consider doing that?
Senator, I think that probably would be a question that would more appropriately be for the Department of Motor Vehicles. I'm not sure that that is something that we would have control of.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this your design that you recommended, or is it from them?
No, this is internal.
So-
These are designs that our staff came up with.
So I'm asking, would you add the county upper?
I don't think the department would have a position on that either way. I think that would depend on the motor vehicles and whether they are able to include that or not. I think we would be absolutely neutral on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The counties are added on by sticker. If you would add the county onto the plate, there would be a setup charge for every county that you had in the state of Kansas. But the counties do have stickers. Some counties do put them on the personalized plate, some of them do not.
Yeah, I've noticed that it's not on a majority of them, and it makes it difficult, and it could help in the issue that we have with the tag numbers being duplicate in going through the automatic readers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Senator Pittman online.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Steve, thanks for bringing this forward. I really like the idea of being able to use the plate as an alternate to a permit. I think it's a really slick idea. However, I got to ask, 4 seems excessive to me. It seems like you're getting over it's making it harder to get to those $5,000 limits. They really get it taken off. It seems like we could start with 1 and then break it apart into 2 as you get into wanting to differentiate the money to see how the program's moving forward. Is there a reason you went with all 4? I mean, it's kind of like whole hog in trying where we're getting. I have a little concern on that, so I'm just wondering, what's the motivation for 4 instead of 1 or even 2 to kind of differentiate those 2 programs?
Senator, thank you for the question. I think that when the department began to discuss this internally, we recognized that we have a very broad mission, and we have a variety of areas that we attempt to provide opportunities and provide management for resources in the state. And we felt like this would best represent that breadth of responsibility in the areas of conservation and outdoor recreation that we represent.
So beyond the mission, are you trying to adhere to different constituencies of plate holders here?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, we felt like from questions that we have had from the public in the past, it is not uncommon for someone to inquire whether there is a affinity plate for example, state parks or fishing or wildlife. And recognizing those different constituencies is very much a part of the reason.
Mr. Chair, just one last question on that, if I may.
You may.
Is there a reason not to combine the hunting and fishing together in this one, in your mind, Steve?
Well, Senator, in my mind, we have people who are very avid in distinct areas, fishing being a good example, hunting being another good example, that they dedicate a lot of their time, a lot of their free time to those activities. And this is an opportunity for them to both recognize that part of who they are, and at the same time provide some support to that area. Having the distinct plates then allows us a way to provide support back to that distinct area that the individual is wishing to express their support for. So it's both a way to give them an opportunity to select a plate that best recognizes what they have an interest in and provides us a way to fairly then distribute that revenue back to that area they are wishing to support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions for Steve? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Are
Chairman.
there any further proponents wishing to testify on House Bill 2597? Any opponents? Any neutrals? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Bill 2597. Turn our attention to House Bill 2483. Adam, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2483 would provide a new distinctive license plate, the Daughters of the American Revolution license plate. This plate would be subject to the $250 initial plate commitment and the payment of up to $5,000 in development costs. The Daughters of the American Revolution, with the division's approval, will be able to assist with the design of the plate. The Daughters of the American Revolution would be able to set a royalty payment fee in the amount somewhere between $25 up to $100. And such fees would go towards the support of the Daughters of the American Revolution organization. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? See none, thank you. First up, for House Bill 2883, we have Susan Metzger. Written only. Is there anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent?
Mr. Chair, if I may, since we don't have any proponents there, can I ask the revisor one question about where the money goes?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Adam, can you repeat when the money gets collected? Does it go to individual chapters? Did you say that they could designate it to a chapter, or does it go to the statewide organization of the Daughters of American Revolution?
Adam?
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Senator. The bill itself it doesn't specify a particular like subchapter. It just says the Daughters of the American Revolution. To be honest with you, I didn't draft this one. This one came from the House side, so I'm not sure of their corporate makeup. The bill itself just states the Daughters of the American Revolution, so I'm not entirely certain.
Okay.
And Adam, and Jeff, in testimony, it says this lady, Susan, has the honor of serving as the Kansas Society Daughters of American Revolution State Regent, while DAR is a non-political organization and take more than $3,000 would gladly and proudly share their DAR membership on their vehicles. So maybe that's something we need to clear up before we work this bill. Make sure we got the right organization receiving the money, or who's responsible for getting the number of plates. Are there any further proponents? Hello? Apparently we got some feedback. Are there any opponents? Any neutrals? We'll close the hearing on 2483. Turn our attention to Senate Bill 459. Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 459 would also provide for a new distinctive license plate, the Order of the Eastern Star license plate. They would be subject to the $250 initial plate commitment and payment up to $5,000 of development costs. The Order of the Eastern Star, with the division's approval, will be able to assist with the design of the plate. The Order of the Eastern Star could set a royalty fee in the amount of $25 up to $100. And such fees would go towards the support of the Order of the Eastern Star. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Adam. And I'm a little bit asleep at the wheel here. It seems like when we talked about these plates, one of the things last year, I think, could have been the year before, we talked about some kind of a reporting requirement in terms of how many they sold and their budget and so on. And I don't know if you recall that. Maybe the chair recalls that. And I just wondered if we want that, if that's something that needs to be put in and amended to every bill, or if that's now part of statutory requirements. And I don't recall how we did that and if we did that.
Senator, I recall what you're talking about. I can't recall if it actually got enacted into law or not. I'd have to check on that.
So when we work these bills, maybe we should have that, and if we perchance combine them, maybe we should add that as an amendment so these organizations know that they're, at least I think there should be a reporting requirement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think the Department of
Mr. Chair.
Revenue submit. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, on that point, we just need to be sure we don't select one organization like the Order of the Eastern Star or the Daughters of American Revolution and do it only to them. It should be across to everybody equally if we do that.
Right, I believe we've received that presentation. When we get the Department of Revenue in giving their presentation, they let you know how many license plates, but if we wanted to have that as a separate report, that's fine. It should be for everybody, though I do agree. Senator Hawk?
No, and Mr. Chairman, I'm perfectly happy to have that as part of their report. I just wasn't sure if that needed to be added to each one of these or if that was already in statute, but if it is, I think we want to make sure each of these organizations know that that's an expectation. Thank you.
Jill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a reporting requirement was added in new section 11 of House Bill 2166 last year. Not later than May 1st of each year, any organization that receives payment from any fee imposed on the issuance or renewal of a distinctive license plate shall submit to blah, 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 the total amount of money received, the list of expenditures, and so forth.
So good. So what I hear is that we don't need to add that to each of these bills. It's just there. All we need to do is make sure that they're getting notified of that so they can make those reports and know that's expected. So thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Dietrich?
Thank you. I vaguely recalled passing that last year, so thank you. Jill, may I ask you a question? Who is that report to be given to? Is it Department of Revenue? Is it the Transportation Committees?
The House and Senate Transportation Committees, Legislative Research, and the State Treasurer.
Thank you. And may I ask one more question, perhaps of the reviser? There's no testimony with this. Do we know who requested this?
We do, but I'm not allowed to divulge it.
Oh, you can, okay, very good.
It
Sorry.
was requested in federal and state affairs. I do know that.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Do we have any proponents? Thank you, Adam. Further questions for Adam? Seeing none. Do we have any proponents, anybody wishing to speak to this? Seeing none. Any opponents? Yes.
I'm sorry. I will say that I do have an Order of the Eastern Star organization in my community. I did not introduce this, but I'm a big supporter of theirs. I could follow up with the organization and find out if they want to submit testimony after the hearing, but I don't know if you'd allow that or not.
That would be excellent if we want to get a license plate.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any opponents? Any neutrals? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 459. Committee would like to turn our attention to Senate Bill 529. Adam, do you want to give us a briefing on 529?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're talking Senate Bill 529, is that correct? 529. Senate Bill 529 would allow the Secretary of Revenue to implement a program to permit the electronic renewal of an identification card. These are the non-driver identification cards. Such program would require that the individual has previously provided documentation of identity, lawful presence, and residence in the state. The division may rely on the most recent color, digital image, and signature of the applicant on file in order to renew the identification card. As a provision, the electronic renewal is only permitted one time after an individual completes the ordinary renewal process. Additionally, individuals subject to the Kansas Offender Registration Act would not be eligible for the electronic renewal. The division would be required to report to both the Senate and House Transportation Committees prior to February 1st of 2023 regarding the online renewal process. And then as a kind of separate provision, the bill would specify that facial image displayed on the front of an identification card could be either displayed by a digital color image or photograph or a laser engraved photograph of the licensee. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a section in there, I had an amendment.
Do you want to explain your amendment, and then we'll get a second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What my amendment does is removes the language for rules and regs, leaving the department to interpret how they may. It may not seem like a big issue, but yesterday in the Rules and Regs Committee, the Department of KDHE had taken it upon themselves to rewrite the rules and regs without major statutory change and increase their fees based on what other states were doing. I just am not a fan of us leaving up that much discretion to departments and agencies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second on the motion? Seconded by Senator Bowers. Committee, what's your pleasure on any further questions on the motion? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for Senator Tyson. So are there any potential problems of not having an updating of rules and regs if we change this in some way? I'm just thinking of any unintended consequence in terms of how that process goes relative to the technology involved. I'm guessing not, but I know that every agency is supposed to have statutory authority before they change rules and regs. And I just wonder if there might be some unintended consequence of this where they would need to make a change. And I'm assuming this doesn't prevent that.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does not prevent that. This just does not give the leniency of adopting rules and regs to create. We are creating this program through statute, and that's how it should be created, not through rules and regulations.
And if I read the intent of your amendment, they wouldn't need to go through the rules and reg process to go ahead and implement this as described in testimony and in the bill.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Committee, further questions on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. We're back on the bill. Committee, what's your pleasure? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee recommend Senate Bill 529 favorably as amended.
You've made motion by Senator Clay, seconded by Senator Hawk. Further questions on the bill? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? The bill is on its way. Recommended favorable for passage. Committee, I would like to turn our attention a little bit to the AV bill to start on this. I don't intend on finishing it today, but I believe we have a fairly substantial amendment from the industry group that was together. I'd like to get started on this, help save us time during the week. Adam, do you have the amendment from Braden?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like me to pass out.
Yes, please. Adam, if you could give us a briefing on the amendment?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. There are multiple changes, obviously, as you can see throughout the entire bill. Page 2. Amends the, kind of condenses down and amends the provisions of dealing with when a driverless vehicle can operate after with a human driver present. To be honest with you, I don't know if anyone here who's more involved with the actual, I mean, I can go through the language. I wasn't really involved in the creation of it, but I'd be happy to kind of go through point by point.
Well, committee, why don't we, well, Adam, why don't we switch over? This has already been handed out. Why don't we switch over to the amendment that I requested? If you want to hand that out, I can probably explain it. Committee, we heard a neutral testimony that the Kansas Corporation Commission, who is in charge of commercial vehicle motor safety, had no positions on the advisory board. So it was my intent, I'll offer this amendment to add 2 members appointed by the chair of the State Corporation Commission to the advisory board. I have a second, seconded by Senator Clays. Committee discussion on the amendment.
Mr. Chair, just one.
Go ahead.
I'm in support of this, as I mentioned to you before. I just want to, where is the advisory committee inside of the balloon amendment that was proposed by the industry group? Or is the advisory committee in the underlying bill that we haven't modified yet?
I don't know that it's included in the other, the balloon amendment by industry. I did speak with industry and they had no problem with me adding these in. I'm looking right now.
I'm very supportive. I just want to make sure we got the right process so that it gets in there. I'm sure.
Yes, it's not in the balloon amendment that was handed out before. I know there's a law enforcement amendment coming, and there may be more amendments. So I'll just go to this easy one to get us, just trying to get through the process, save us some time for later in the week.
Yep.
Further questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Amendment's adopted. Committee, Senator Hawk.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment also, whenever we want to look at it, and maybe I just want to introduce it and let it sit until we work the bill further, but if appropriate.
Your choice.
What's your intention for the rest of today?
If you got an amendment that we can discuss, we'll move forward with it.
I'd be happy to do that then. Adam could.
Committee will want to keep these amendments because we're not going to finish working this bill today.
I can go ahead and explain it while we're handing it out. And I certainly appreciate Adam trying to get into writing what I did not very eloquently describe. But my intent is to essentially have the legislature, before we go to driverless vehicles, to get this report, I presume from this advisory committee, and to see how that year goes, and then that we would need to take action in order to have that change to a driverless vehicle after that year period. So there would be a report. So that amendment is on page 2, and then I need to ask Adam a question. On page 4, does that still pertain to the larger vehicles, or does that pertain to the robo-ride or the ride share? So page 4 is the same thing, and it says that before we would essentially have driverless autonomous vehicles for ride share type vehicles, that we would have to also take action, affirmative action, to allow that to happen again. So it just puts another guardrail up. And then I think there's another date in terms of that committee making a report to us on page 6. February 20th.
Check with staff for a second because we had a person leave to get page pictures. Excellent, we're good.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say I did share this with Ms. Braden, and there was some concern about the rideshare portion, and I've not gotten feedback on that. And I don't want to speak for her, but these are things that I certainly personally would feel better about, just making sure that we actually got reports back, so it wasn't just 1 year and then all of a sudden we had multiple driverless vehicles on the road. My hope is that would be just fine, but I would want the legislature to take another bite on that before we actually we're willing to potentially cause a hazard for public safety.
Are you wanting to offer this today, or do you want to hold off until we work the bill to offer it?
I think I would prefer to wait so that the group that provided testimony has a chance to weigh in on it, but I'm not sure I'll change my position on it, but it would give people on our committee a chance to hear from some of the other people that had worked the bill.
Thank you. Committee, with that, we do have a meeting, just a reminder, we do have a meeting scheduled for Friday. We do plan on working this 546. It's going to be a long one. We'll try and piece it in as we go. Those listening, hopefully we'll get some members of the group here.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Pittman.
one of the opponents' testimony did have me concerned, and I was wondering if there's some way we can get some clarification on the liability limits that's a little bit more definitive, because there was a claim, and it's probably true in certain circumstances, that liability was only at 50,000, and then I've talked to other folks that said, you know, commercial vehicles already have a $5 million limit. Is there any way you could have, I don't know who, maybe research could just help us understand what are the liability limits that could be involved here for these autonomous vehicles that would, you know, if we're changing anything or if we're not, what those limits are for the different entities?
We can ask research to look into that. I may ask one of our members of the audience, the Motor Carriers Association, to see if he wanted to address that any right now.
Absolutely.
That'd probably be helpful. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
Motor Carriers Association. The 50,000 limit, 10, 50, and 25 is liability for a standard automobile or a pickup with a regular license tag on it. Commercial vehicles, under the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the base liability limit is $750,000. If you're hauling a cargo tank, say with gasoline, it's $1 million. If you're hauling anhydrous ammonia or LP gas, it's $5 million. So the $2 million that's currently in this bill is a bit steep for what they're asking for normal cargo. And I'd be happy to respond to questions, Mr. Chairman.
That answer your question, Jeff, or are you still wanting to get Senator Pittman?
Well, so sorry. So thank you, Tom, for stepping up. So I guess what you're saying is that if we had an autonomous vehicle hauling cargo in a normal commercial way, the minimum is at 750,000, not the 50,000 that we may have heard from other testimony, as long as the cargo is not an individual passenger and say like a car like thing, right?
There are separate liability limits for transportation of passengers that I'm not 100% familiar with without looking at the regulations. But if it has a gross vehicle weight of 10,001 pounds or more, it is considered a commercial vehicle and therefore would meet the federal requirement of the $750,000 liability.
And I'm just pushing in just a little bit, and I really appreciate it. If we're below that 10,000 pound limit, say a very light commercial vehicle, do you have any idea what the liability limits become?
The minimum liability limits under Kansas law are 10, 50, and 25,000. If you look at the way it goes for liability only.
Okay.
Frankly, and I'm going to use my own experience, but my insurance company won't write less than 300,000 for my cars.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Committee, with that, it's going to be an interesting bill when we get to it. Continue working on it. Thank you for presenting your amendments so we can get them out forward, Senator Hawk. With that, we are adjourned.